What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you my top 5 cards coming out of Phantom Rage. Phantom Rage debuts about a week from now at the time of recording this video, and there's a lot of new cards to be had, some potential meta-changing strategies, and we're going to be covering the cards that you want to look out for coming out of this next set. And also, if you are going to be purchasing any cards from the set, be sure to use my TCG Player affiliate link down in the description. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps directly support the channel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So kicking things off at number 5, we actually have an entire archetype bundled into this one spot, and that archetype is Virtual World. Now, you might be thinking, Virtual World, this is a deck that is kind of gimmicky, it's just like another combo deck. How is this on the list? Well, that gimmicky combo deck actually just took first place at what's arguably the largest Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament of 2020 taking place in Taiwan. This was an in-person tournament, it was a 3v3 style tournament, and it took first place with over 330 teams in participation. That's over 1,000 people competing. I think the official numbers are actually a little bit higher than that, but that's pretty impressive, also considering the fact that Max C is legal in the OCG as well, where combo decks have a much more difficult time thriving. If you look at the OCG's metagame, their top decks at the moment are like Eldritch, Zodiac, and much slower control decks, because that's kind of the style of deck that is able to thrive in that environment because their format is drastically different than ours. So you might think, okay, well, if you're translating that into the TCG, how is that exactly going to work? Well, for people who don't know, the Virtual World is an archetype comprised of Wind, Psychic, and Earth Worm type monsters of all things, and these cards kind of work in this very interesting way where they revolve around banishing one another and also like utilizing the different types of cards, monsters, spells, and traps to be able to like search one another, summon one another, and do all these crazy things. If you want to see a full video on all the cards, I did a video on that, but what it boils down to is you're going to be making a combo deck that can essentially end on a true King of all Calamities, which is already pretty good. You can also end on the Dex in Theme Synchro monster, which happens to be level 9, so that helps facilitate your Calamities plays, which is a floating macrocosmos and can recur itself from the graveyard. And in addition to that, you get to play the Dex in Theme Trap card, which also represents a card that can pop one of your opponent's threats. So in terms of combo decks, that's pretty damn good. Like, when you look at it in the context of our current metagame, when you have stuff like Dragon Link and you have stuff like all these crazy combo decks that you see running around, is it that good? Time will tell, but the thing is, when you think about when we have a ban list on the horizon coming in early to mid-December, depending on how the ban list takes care of those decks, this is a deck that could potentially thrive here in the TCG. People should not turn a blind eye to a deck that can turbo out Calamities and can do it rather consistently, but also being able to back up that Calamities with further support and can easily transition and pivot that into an OTK on the following turn, because the deck is able to combo off, summon a bunch of monsters, well-statted monsters at that, and can just easily OTK. So there's a lot of potential here for this archetype, and it's still relatively unexplored. And again, if a deck like this was able to take first place in the OCG, where Max C is legal at 3 copies, then clearly when you translate that to the TCG, there is some hope here for that deck, because combo decks thrive here because it's a much more aggressive format, and so this is something you definitely might want to have on your radar. So for those reasons, that's why I gave Virtual World my number 5 spot. But coming in at number 4, we're going to actually get into some specific cards here now, and the first one shouldn't really come as a surprise, because that card is Phantom Knight of Torn Scales. Phantom Knight of Torn Scales is a Dark Warrior level 3 effect monster with 600 attack and 1600 defense. You can discard a card to send one Phantom Knight's card from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of itself, and if another Phantom Knight's card in your graveyard is banished while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, and you can only use each effect of the Phantom Knight of Torn Scales once per turn. This is essentially a wet dream for any Phantom Knight players out there, anyone who likes any sort of Burning Abyss Phantom Knight hybrid decks, or anyone who likes splashing their Phantom Knights into any other strategies. This card is just a boon to all of the above. Being able to just special summon itself out as a free extender is great, especially when all of the Phantom Knight monsters banish themselves to get some sort of advantage. By having this card already in your graveyard, you get some incredible setup to then allow you to extend even further and do even more plays. Whether you're going into a rank 3 play, like something like Dante to ultimately upgrade into a Beatrice, whether you're using that material to go into something like Appaloosa or just another Link play, maybe a Masquerena. The possibilities are truly endless when it comes to this card. You're only limited by the decks that you can play it in that facilitate the Phantom Knight engine. This card is just incredible all the way around. The only limiting factor is the fact that it's a Phantom Knight card, and you just have to incorporate it into some sort of Phantom Knight package in whatever deck that you're playing. But other than that, there really isn't much else to say. The card's incredible, and for those reasons, that's why I put Torn Scales as my number 4 spot. Now, coming in at number 3, we actually have a trap card, which is pretty rare for these types of videos because trap cards have to usually go above and beyond for me to even consider them on a list like this, but I think this one is definitely up for consideration. That card is Warning Point. Warning Point is a normal trap card that reads, when a monster or monsters is summoned this turn, that face-up monster or monsters cannot attack, their effects are negated. Also, it cannot be used as material for a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link summon. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily fair to call this the dimensional barrier of 2020, but there's a lot of comparisons to be had for sure. I think one of the biggest differences, to definitely not get the two mixed up, is that dimensional barrier is a lingering effect. This card is going to last throughout the entirety of the turn, and it doesn't specifically care about what monsters are on the field at a given point. It's just going to blanket you pick whatever summoning mechanic aside from Links that you don't want your opponent to do, and they're not able to do it. Warning Point is a little bit different. Now, while you can incorporate Links into this, and it has this sort of no material-esque aspect to it, which is pretty important, it only applies to the specific monsters that are on the field that you're using when you activate Warning Point in response to the summon of a monster. And that's a big deal. That definitely makes a big difference, but it definitely can slow down a lot of strategies. Think about a lot of strategies that just start by normal summoning a monster, and then they go into a myriad of Link plays that ultimately result in just a ridiculous board. If you Warning Point that first summon, then it's going to be really difficult for them to advance their game state because they're just going to be frozen with that card on the field. It can't use its effects, it can't attack, which is largely irrelevant, but most importantly, it's not going to be able to be used as material for any of those types of summons. So if your opponent doesn't have any type of extender, they might just be stuck there, and ultimately, even if they do have an extender, they might actually need 2 of them because, again, it's not like you're just stopping them from one type of summoning mechanic, you're stopping them from multiple. And so the thing is, having that sort of omni prevention when it comes to the summoning mechanics can make it really difficult to play around a card like this. Even better is when your opponent special summons multiple monsters at a time, Warning Point can hit both of them, and I think it's really good that they ensure that a card like this can have that sort of versatility if your opponent were to special summon multiple monsters at a time. What's also great about Warning Point is that it is a normal trap card, which means it's very difficult to interact with. The only way you can really interact with this card is by already having a threat established on the field that can have some sort of trap negation capabilities or an omni negate at that point, or you have to preemptively pop this card before your turn comes back around or before you initiate your first summon. That would really hinge on your play going through. So that way, being a normal trap card means it can't be responded to with like traditional spell and trap removal, like say Mystical Space Typhoon, Cosmic Cyclone, whereas if it were a continuous trap card and being a floodgate, it would have those vulnerabilities and your opponent would have a much wider array of options to stop you from using it. So being a normal trap here, again, is where it becomes very similar to Dimensional Barrier and has a lot of flexibility because it's rather difficult to deal with. Now, at the end of the day, it is a trap card, right? And that comes with its own slew of issues. I mean, if you're not going first, this card is basically going to be dead in most instances because if your opponent has already established their field, Warning Point's not really going to do much for you, but could be a nice card for your side deck so that when you know your opponent's going to make you go first, you can just easily ice them with Warning Point and they may not be able to play whatsoever. Warning Point is definitely strong enough to be considered for experimentation, and I think in the early stages of the Phantom Rage metagame, people are going to try and see what decks it's strong against, see possibly about side decking it. I think there's definitely going to be a home for this card, we just don't know where that is yet, and so for those reasons, that's why I gave Warning Point my number 3 spot. But coming in at number 2, man, are we getting to the big boys now, because for our number 2 pick, we have Alpha, the Master of Beasts. Alpha, the Master of Beasts is an Earth Beast level 8 effect monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense. Cannot be normal summon or set, must first be special summoned from your hand, while the total attack of all monsters your opponent controls is more than that of all monsters you control. You can target any number of Beast, Beast Warrior, and or Winged Beast monsters you control, return them to the hand. Then, return face-up monsters your opponent controls to the hand equal to the number of cards you return to the hand. Also, for the rest of this turn, Alpha, the Master of Beasts you control cannot attack attack directly. You can only use this effect of Alpha, the Master of Beasts, once per turn. This card will see play. This card is essentially the 2020 equivalent to Pankratops, and I know we're making a lot of comparisons to other cards in this video, but that is just to illustrate how powerful these cards truly are. One of the very interesting things about Alpha is that it actually doesn't have a restriction on being special summoned multiple times in a turn, and why that's good is because you can special summon it if your opponent has a total collective attack power that's higher than yours, special summon the Alpha, bounce itself and one of your opponent's monsters back, whether it's to their hand or to their extra deck in the instance of an extra deck monster. Then, if your opponent still has more attack power on their field than you do, you can re-summon Alpha again, it just can't attack directly, which is perfectly fine because it's still a 3000 attack monster that can hit over virtually everything in the game. Alpha also allows you to pave the way for your initial setups because if you need to force some sort of negation, Alpha is a great way to do so, and if your opponent doesn't have a way to answer it immediately, Alpha is just going to immediately take over the game because not only are you going to be able to bounce threats back to their hand or their extra deck, just having that 3000 offensive capability is going to be huge, and if your opponent leaves monsters in attack position, and most notably Link monsters can't go in defense position, then Alpha can easily run them over and really help close the gap from your opponent's life points being 8,000 or 0. I guarantee you this card will see play. Whether it's a main deck tech or a side deck staple, this card has so much potential, there is so much power behind the effect here that there is no conceivable universe that I can see that this card will not see some success somewhere. It's too good. Like, flat out, this card is incredible, and so for those reasons, that's why I gave Alpha, the Master of Beasts, my number 2 spot. But that's gonna bring us to my number 1 card coming out of Phantom Rage, and if you haven't already figured it out, it's Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder. AA-ZEUS is a light machine Xyz effect monster, rank 12 with 3000 attack and defense. It requires 2 level 12 monsters to make, but once per turn, if an Xyz monster battled this turn, you can also Xyz summon this monster by using one Xyz monster you control as material, and you transfer its materials to this card. As a quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. Once per turn, if another card or cards you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. This card takes Xyz focused decks to an entire nother level. This card is absurd. You can easily get this monster onto the field just by ensuring something is battled this turn. You slap Zeus down, and guess what? You send all cards on the field to the graveyard. It doesn't target, it doesn't destroy, it sends all other cards to the field. This card still stays up, by the way, so if this card has more materials, you can then use that effect again during your opponent's turn at quick effect speed, which is ridiculous, and that way you're able to clear the board and set up for a future play. AA-ZEUS becomes even more absurd when you look at it in the context of Zoodiac, because Zoodiac is able to stack multiple Xyz monsters on a single monster, and then as long as one of those monsters has attacked, which with a card like Borbo is super easy because you can attack your opponent directly, you can just slap Zeus down. You're going to have like 5, maybe 6 materials under that Zeus, so you can activate that effect multiple times, and really just comes at the cost of your extra deck, which Zoodiac can recycle very easily with cards like Zoodiac Combo, Pot of Avarice, the list goes on. AA-ZEUS single-handedly took Zoodiac back to tier 1 contention in the OCG. That is how broken of a card this is. Now, the thing is, the TCG is a much different format. It's much more combo-filled, it's much more aggressive, and so the thing is, will Zoodiac be able to thrive in a format that has a lot more aggression and isn't playing as much control as the OCG? We'll have to see. I don't have the answer at the moment, but if there is any way Zoodiac's going to have a modicum of a chance of success here in the TCG, it's going to be due in part to AA-ZEUS. This card is just unbelievably broken. This is one of the most powerful cards ever created. It's not often that you see a card that sends all the other cards on the field to the graveyard and has one of the easiest to fulfill summoning conditions in the game. Well, I guess we have seen that before, but it's not really a fair comparison. However, the card is still insane. People are going to find ways to incorporate this into a myriad of other Xyz strategies. You can bet that you are going to be on the receiving end of this card at one point, and you are not going to be happy about it. And so for those reasons, I had to put AA-ZEUS as my #1 card coming out of Phantom Rage. But guys, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about your top picks coming out of Phantom Rage. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.